Tenable Network Security, creators of Nessus, the world's best vulnerability scanner. Jumpstart your security program today and evaluate Security Center CV, the continuous monitoring solution. For more information, visit them on the web at tenable.com. ProXPN is the leading VPN service offering free accounts, excellent premium features, and an outstanding commitment to privacy and security online. Use the discount code WEEKLY and save 50% off for life. NetSparker, the developers of desktop and cloud-based web application security scanners that enable you to automatically identify vulnerabilities in your web applications and web services. NetSparker scanners employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities with a proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at netsparker.com or email them at contact@netsparker.com. Welcome back, everyone, to Security Weekly. This is the security news for this week. I do have to say, Doug, I want to thank you for coming here in studio and participating in the show. You have an open invitation, dude. It's been so much fun. Free drinks, cigars. You can come anytime, dude. Mm-hmm. Totally. This martini with the cigar, I mean, it's an experience. Yeah. Like I'm in heaven right now, just with that aspect. I want to start off with. But you want to start off with something?
I got something real quick.
I want Larry to go first.
Speaking of being in heaven. It's not very often we see a new security-related blog show up.
Really?
I found one 2 days ago, and it's done by our good friend Tom Liston. He has a new security blog called yourflyisopen.com. And it is...
I love Tom.
Just wait. It has come out of stories from his Net Menaces stuff that he investigates. He's got a couple of posts, and I hope he keeps it up because...
It's myflyisopen.com?
Yourflyisopen.com.
Your fly.
And
Tom's fly's not open. No. Your fly is...
So with blog posts like Mirror, Mirror on the Net, the kids are okay. Toys from China. Partly cloudy with a chance of colon cleanse. And those crazy Belgians, asterisk. You know it's going to be good. So let me read you a bit. Those crazy Belgians. I believe it's important to point out that I see myself as a kindred spirit to the great Lyle Zapata, as that I am fully ascribed to the strongly held belief that Belgium doesn't exist, so forth and so on. We all know that Belgium is, and always has been, a leftist ruse. It all began with some Python codes that wouldn't run, on and on and on and on. I get to see stuff on unsuspecting websites, mostly running as WordPress, the web app, hackers, BFF, TM. On and on and on. And notice the content length in there. Yes, that's 3 megabytes. Somebody has apparently a lot to get off their chest. Kind of like this. I got an Amazon Echo, and 3 days ago I asked, Alexa, what does it take to make a woman happy? And she hasn't shut up since. To give you an idea of some of the content of some of these blog posts.
You can actually, it's funny.
I can hear Tom.
And the writing, just from what you've read, is really awesome. You can actually limit the content length in PHP, you can limit some of that stuff. And he's right. I mean, WordPress is the attacker's BFF.
Yep. And just some of the stuff that he's been doing with some of these and getting the opportunity to write about some of this stuff is awesome.
I'm excited about that. Thank you for pointing that out, Larry.
Awesome. It's awesome.
Come on. Tom has beautiful hair. And so beautiful hair and good writing is just awesome.
He has beautiful hair.
Have you not sat across from him at a dinner yet?
I sat across from Justin Searle.
I sat across from Tom at many a dinners, which I will never forget.
Yeah, I've sat across from Tom on many a pen tests. And in fact, on at least one occasion, Tom and I have had a Python war in that who can code this thing to do this thing in Python faster.
Wow.
And I suck at Python, and I won, except his worked and mine didn't. Mine sort of worked, but his really worked.
But we got to have Tom back on the show now that you say that. Yeah, we got to have Tom back on the show. All right. Our feature story for this evening. Pornhub bug bounty program will pay hackers up to $25,000. That's
Security
right.
Is hard.
Pornhub has adopted a bug bounty program, and here is all that I have to say on this topic. And I quote myself. I guess people really get off on hacking porn sites. That's one way to spank malicious attackers. I hope that none of the bug bounty hunters cause an increased load on the site. Security is hard. Implement a bug bounty program. And in other news, Pornhub is releasing a new parody adult film titled Big Booty Bug Bounty Hunters. And that concludes my puns
The pun is stronger
for this episode.
Way to go, James Bond.
So when I saw this was in fact really great, and I started thinking about it, and I'm like, man, I should go check this out. And I went to Pornhub.com, and I got distracted for about 2 hours, and then said, "Yeah, honey, it's for research."
It's for research. I've made exactly $0.
And
but
hey, I got to go to the bathroom for like 20 minutes. And it may, in fact, be a very interesting ruse, because if you read the terms of their bug bounty program, you're only allowed to attack accounts that you own. So that means you actually have to have an account on Pornhub, which means you get distracted more often by premium content. I mean, not that would ever happen.
I in all seriousness, I subscribe to the bug bounty kind of philosophy.
Yeah.
I think it's
testing. It's a smart strategy. Don't do testing yourself. Let other people do it on the hope they'll get something in return.
I think it's great. And I find it interesting that, I think it was Pornhub, X Hamster, and another adult site were the subject of malware being embedded in some of their advertising. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a direct result of that, saying we need to be more secure. I'm not sure what
Yep. And it was interesting.
They must make all their money from advertising, right? So if there's malware in there, I don't know where. I don't know how the financial model works.
We don't know what the model is,
because we don't pay for porn. It's not a user.
You don't get in front of people in their porn.
Well, they do have a premium. They do have a premium. Do they have a premium model?
I don't know. They have a free part that works just fine for me. I mean,
well then.
I mean,
that's what my friends tell me. My friends tell me they have a free model that works great.
Research.
Right.
For research.
Right.
I'm going to publish that.
And it works for my iPhone in the hotel. I mean,
this totally should have been the last story. Just end. Fade to black. Go home.
Fade to black. Drop the mic. Jack, don't drop the mic. Don't.
Don't drop that mic. No way.
Hey, so I'm looking at the stories. Larry, tell me more about the shakeup in the endpoint security market, because that one's interesting to me.
So this is the one, Paul, that I think that may end up being an interesting thing carrying over to Enterprise Security Weekly, in that this whole, quote, shakeup in the endpoint security market revolves around VirusTotal, in that many of the endpoint security folks leverage VirusTotal to do a lot of some of their back-end scanning of stuff. And what happens when VirusTotal goes away to these folks? Because, VirusTotal, their API is open source. All they have to do is pay a subscription fee, and then they can use it as much as they want. And, oh my gosh, we have the best back-end scanners with multiple engines. And a lot of the times the way they do that is through VirusTotal. Mm-hmm. And
is VirusTotal threatening to remove that access or charge more? Or
no, they're doing some different things the way they do that. Well, one, they're basically saying if you're using VirusTotal, you have to tell people you're using VirusTotal.
Okay.
Or we can take things away. New scanners joining the community will need to prove a certification and or independent reviews from security testers according to best practices of anti-malware testing standards organization. It's basically saying that you just can't take all VirusTotal's hard work and implement it as your own.
So you can't just take VirusTotal and call it antivirus and say we have the best antivirus engine.
Exactly.
Right.
Or we do all these various different engines. And
because it's a common denominator, essentially.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, it's basically, we don't mind that you rip off our work, but if you're going to rip off our work, you got to tell people
you got to tell people that we're
Yeah.
I can see that.
They also want you to contribute back. They're basically saying stop freeloading. It's not just tell us who we are. It's basically saying we'll get better if you contribute into it, and if you're not, stop being a leech.
Yep.
I got
so
you.
like the 90s are coming back.
Well, I think it's a lot of the open source model, right, that is under scrutiny. Is we've seen and talked about in Jack. I think Tenable is an example of that, where you create this open source model, and when the 99% of your users of this open source model are just consumers of it and not contributing back, there's a diminishing returns. And I think this is kind of a similar story.
And not only that, not only using the model and not contributing back, but profiting from that model and not contributing back.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, when I'm reading this, I think that's the bigger issue into it, right? Because if you look at running a community or anything else, you guys know this from podcasting for years, the percentage of people that are going to engage is exceptionally small, but that's okay. It's really not a percentage of contribution. It's a quality contribution.
Yes.
But the difference is if somebody else is profiting off of your back and then making egregious claims based on it, I can see where that changes it. So this is interesting. But so then, Larry, so why does this change? Why does this change it completely?
Well, so you think about how many of those desktop products are actually using VirusTotal, and that they all have to admit that maybe they're all on the equal playing field now. And that they, in fact, do very little innovation when they have been touting that they do lots of innovation.
Right. They're saying their innovation claims are based on the fact they use VirusTotal, and there's multiple vendors saying, or they're not saying that they use VirusTotal, but in fact are, right?
And
So
the thing that I was thinking about going towards the enterprise side is that helping folks select a good endpoint protection software.
Yeah,
and
it's an issue.
And based on one of these new types of things that are, as the industry is evolving, the types of questions you can ask your vendors. Like Mike Poor used to play at Sands going into the vendor expo.
Oh, expert at that.
And, asking the questions to call the bullshit, like when it was the wireless vendors. There was so when are you going to implement 802.11l?
And they're like, what's
we already
that?
had that. I saw.
Oh yeah, no, we already have that. We're actually have that in development. It should be rolling into our product in the next.
It's on the
weeks.
roadmap.
It's on the roadmap, and it'll be in the product live in about the next 3 weeks. Well, in fact,
All right,
802.11l is reserved and will never be used.
It lets us cut through the BS and get down. You can have better questions with people now, and it does let you change the game out.
Oh, speaking of BS,
yeah.
Can we talk about Linus Torvalds again? Now, you want to hear a quote from Linus Torvalds on IoT security? He says, and I quote, "Job one is to get the job done. In an industry, things will get done without security. Security plays second fiddle. It will be slightly distressing if someone hacks into my home furnace and turns my heat up to 95. I'll be bothered. In theory, open source can be patched. In practice, vendors get in the way."
So someone pissed in his Cheerios or something.
But you know what?
I think people have been continually pissing in Linus's Cheerios, to be honest with you.
The last bit is very true.
No, but look at OpenSSL. That's an open source project.
Yeah, and it can be patched, in theory.
In theory, it can be patched.
And implemented in IoT, vendors are getting in the way of, well, it could be patched, but I don't have the staff that could potentially patch that and contribute back to the open source community. I just need to take what's out there and implement it.
Yeah, but open source runs into that problem. As with OpenSSL, we don't have the resources to patch. So I think his argument is kind of invalid. Like, yeah, in theory, open source can be patched, but in theory, vendors can do it. And I don't think there's much of a difference, to be honest with you. I think that open source projects suffer from the same problems that commercial software suffers from. It's a resource issue, right? And the drivers are different, right? Open source isn't a driver for profit. Commercial is. But if you break that down, it's still the open source project doesn't have enough resources to find all the security bugs and fix them. Commercial's the same way. And I think Linus and a lot of open source advocates try and focus on, well, open source is more secure and commercial source isn't. And that's not true. Like the security of the software is independent of whether it's open source or not.
Yep.
And on the flip side of that, there are open source projects that are awesome at security.
Yep.
There are commercial vendors that are awesome at security, and the complete opposite in both cases.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Can everybody hear Nick?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Right.
I think Nick makes a fantastic point, is that collaboration between the two would actually make for more secure software. So thank you for that, Nick.
And I think with the open source stuff, it's a really weird type of thing too, is that, I've got some software out there, open source, on my GitHub, and I get a bug report of, hey, it didn't work in this case that I've got. And I'm like, well, share the case with me. Well, I can't do that because it's data that I can't release. I'm like, anonymize it. Well, I can't do that because then it'll break stuff, or I don't know how to do that. I'm like, well, great.
You're on your own.
Fix it.
Yeah.
And, well, I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to program in Python. Well, guess what? Neither do I. So, sorry. Yeah. Oh, it doesn't work with Python 3.0. Update requirements. Must use Python 2.7. So, yeah, it's an interesting gambit.
There's kind of two parts to that, though, right? We focused right in on the open source being patched versus not patched, but he talked about that security plays second fiddle.
I think it might even play third fiddle.
In some cases.
Or fourth fiddle.
We've got to stop these bullshit dichotomies that security and usability are at odds, that you can't have a startup and think about security. Like if we don't start changing that mindset and getting into those conversations, we're gonna this is a Groundhog Day, but like the shitty B version of it.
I think some of that came about because the original idea of a lot of technology was just make it work. I mean, when I got involved in this, it was just keep it running, keep the lights on.
Absolutely.
Nobody gave a damn whether it was secure, it was good coding. I would get calls in the mainframe room when I was an undergraduate, just like, fix it. And you fixed it.
That's why people were opposed to open source back in the day.
Absolutely.
Because they couldn't go blame someone to make it work.
You bet. But it also meant
who do you call for tech support? The internet.
Yeah.
So I hope maybe, open source helps to bring all of us together in that. And we do see some of that old school stuff because I learned to program from a bunch of engineers who taught me to program because I went down there and said, I want to learn how to program. I mean, in 1977, I went down there and said, I want to learn how to program.
That's the year I was born, by the way.
Bite me. You suck.
That is the appropriate response to that, Doug.
Exactly.
Jack has the same response. Love you, Jack. Love you, Doug.
In 1977, I went in there and said, I want to learn how to write code. And these engineers said, let us teach you. And
here's a punch card.
And I punch cards. Wow, you futuristic guy, you.
Wow.
This was like punch tape or something. But I mean, I think security's getting to that point too, where we have to learn from each other, and open source is helping us to bring all those people to the table in a much bigger place. So we got all the engineers now. Instead of just those four guys that I knew, we got the whole world sitting there. So if we can bring all that together, we can make a much better product.
It's a very prolific point because it takes me back to where I learned how to program. Now, granted, it was 1992 when I was an intern.
Yeah.
But the guys that I worked with had a lot more programming experience and took me under their wing and said, we're going to teach you how to program.
Right.
And that was the most valuable experience that I gained in terms of my programming was having them actually teach me how to program. And it's like, wow, that was an eye-opening experience. And to take that and put it at scale in open source and say, you're not just like Paul working with this guy. Joseph was the guy that I work with, and he turned me on this book called Code Complete. It was written by an engineer at Microsoft. I can't remember his name. Awesome book. But he's like, you need to like really get back to like fundamentals and basics, and that wasn't the stuff that I was learning in school. It was like a whole different level. But then to take that and bring it into open source, where we can work with 50 or 100 different developers and teach each other how to code is not just security, right? But like making sure that software has not just security, but integrity, that it's doing all the things it's meant to do. And in doing that, it's more secure by design, by the nature of it all.
And I wish security could get there, because when I used to go give code, I was 14 years old when I was doing this. I would write code. The guy would say, fix this, and I'd write it, and I would figure it out, and he would go, oh my God, are you kidding me? And then I would learn from that.
Yes.
And I want security to be like that too, where I do something. And that's why open source is so cool, because that means I can do it. And, and somebody does say, are you kidding? That's awful. And you learn from that, and you do something better next time.
You know what's funny, Doug? It's something I've never disclosed on the show before, but when I was in high school, there was a priest that I knew that, no. He had a background in programming. And I'm like, dude, I'm really into this programming thing. He actually showed me a lot of programming. And like being able to mentor with someone like that was really,
it's awesome.
Really, really
I
cool.
mean, when I went to those guys, I went down there and I just, here's these guys, and they were so impressed that somebody wanted to learn what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And I learned so much coding stuff from them because they were just helpful. I would go in there and go, look at this, and they're like, oh, that's awful. Do this way. Have you ever thought about doing this?
I don't know, but I feel like back in the day, like people were more like critical. Like I used to write code, and they're like, dude, you're like way off. Like you had to like really cut your chops.
Yeah.
Like back in the day. I don't know if it's still like. I mean, it is still like that now. Like even today.
I will say this: it's so much like music because I mean that's the way music is too. Mm-hmm. I mean,
you said you were in a band.
Yeah, musicians love each other for one thing. I mean, musicians respect each other because they're musicians. So you go in and you take your guitar and you walk into a club and you say, "I'm going to play." Other guitarists go, okay. Even if you suck, you're just horrible. They go, at least you're trying.
You got up there and you
but they will also just rip you to pieces. I mean, they'll get up there and go, oh, yeah, well, you could do it like that. Or you could do it like this. And you go, oh, yeah, I could. I could do it like that.
Like, dude, you totally hold your guitar the wrong way.
But programmers and networking people are like that, too. But there's a cool thing in that.
There's an art to it, too.
Yeah, but there's a cool thing in that because you're supporting each other at the same, it's respect. Mm-hmm. You say, I know you're not great, but at least you're trying. And that means I'm at least going to give you some respect. And that kind of level of thing lets people get together and learn things because they can say, well, I'm not as good as you, but I can learn from you. And it works the same way in music. You go in there and...
I want to hear from Jack, who switched out his microphone.
Yeah, just arguing with cable. But anyway.
Oh, and I saw you brought out the lollipop mic for a little bit there.
All right.
He sounds like...
Yeah, I got to pull the... I got to pull this apart because it's got an amp built in.
Oh, does that have the little when you squeeze it, you get to talk?
Yeah, it does.
Yes,
it's 2-switch.
Awesome.
Those are awesome. We had one of those in the house on about a 60-foot cord on a CB radio. For my dad was commuting to Boston. That was how they would talk instead of cell phone. My dad would call in on the CB radio with the amp. And would tell my mom that he was at the split and to have dinner ready in so many minutes.
Nice.
I do want to say that my story number 3.
Yes.
This has nothing to do with the story. The headline was Hacker Finds Vulnerability in Mr. Robot Website. Now, I'm not one to pick on people who have vulnerabilities in their website because it's hard to secure your website. It happens, right? And the thing for me was when I went to the original link, it was Forbes that broke the story. And this is our 11th year of podcasting, and I've learned a little about journalism and how we're not just in security, but journalism in general.
Yeah.
We have a whole network in cigars industry as well. So I've been exposed to that journalistic aspect of it. And don't get me wrong, there are journalists that I completely respect in the industry.
And there's some that are complete tools.
There's one that we're trying to get, Glenn Greenwald. Is that the one that broke the Edward Snowden? Is that Glenn Green? Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Greenwald. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. We're trying to get Glenn on the show because I watched a documentary film. He was involved with the whole Edward Snowden leaks, and he's been involved with a lot of big stories. Mm-hmm. So I have a respect for journalism. But kind of backing up from that, when I go to this Forbes site, it says, oh, yeah, we broke the story on how a hacker finds a vulnerability in Mr. Robot website, which is breaking news nowhere near as big as the Edward Snowden leaks. I mean, like we're like miles away, like thousands of miles away, right? Yeah. And they're like, well, you're running an ad blocker on your site, so you need to register with our site to read this article. And I'm kind of like, get over yourselves. Like, that's horrible. I go to Google. I Google for Mr. Robot website hacked. I find this great article from our good friends at thehackernews.com, and they have an editorial on the site. They credit Forbes. But I'm like, dude, it's like, really? Anyway, that was my kind of thing. in any way, there was a cross-site scripting in Mr. Robot's website.
Right.
Not the end of the world, not huge headline news, but my kind of WTF was, like, why do I have to register because I'm running an ad blocker? Like, I run an ad blocker not just because it's annoying, but not just because it's annoying, right? But
I'm surprised you can surf porn.
no, I can. Well, I shouldn't. My friend told me.
For those that have bug bounty programs,
My friend told me that some porn websites will actually give you different messages if you're running an ad blocker versus. I run with an ad blocker, one, because it's annoying, and two, because there are security repercussions with loading ads on your site. And I think a lot of security professionals do that because of the twofold thing. The annoyance factor, and there is the security factor as well.
I don't know if you noticed, but I do for the security and all that type of stuff. I do a lot of surfing through NetNewsWire on the Mac. And how often does the Flash player crash in NetNewsWire on you?
It's bad.
In fact, when it crashes,
Flash had some 0 days this week too.
And in fact,
I didn't put it in the show notes because Flash always has 0
when
day
it
exploits.
crashes, I leave it off.
Yeah.
and it
Reboot.
And it's dead and good.
Yeah.
It's a disconnect, though, because we're trying to solve two different problems. The people that thrive on ad revenue, you're threatening their livelihood.
Yeah.
But we're trying to defend ourselves against malvertising, if you'll
Yes.
forgive me using that. And so we're trying to solve a problem, they're trying to solve a problem, and we're going right past each other, and they get mad. It's like, well, how about if you invest in not serving shit to me when I want to go to your website? I'll look at your ads if they're not evil.
Yeah, like every one of those things on Facebook that's like, got this, oh my God, you'll never believe what happened next.
I'll be honest. On our security sites and our cigar sites, we do run banner advertisements. We actually, because we're hackers at heart, do our best to get around the ad blockers. However, the ads that I run on the site are strictly images. That's all they are. They're
No
images
active
that
content, and it's images you host.
I review every single image in all the code that goes on our websites, and I do my best to make sure that there's no crap in there at all.
And it's not hosted by a third party.
It's hosted by us. It's an image file on our server. Now, having said that, I think it's interesting that all these other sites like have this fabulous technology that serves all those ads that could be problematic. Also, I also think that following podcasts since 2005, like that's the progression of everything, right? Like we're kind of off on a little bit of a tangent. Like we're replacing terrestrial radio. People are listening to podcasts. People choose to listen to this podcast, and I thank every single one of our listeners for doing that. And they don't fast forward through the ads because we stand behind our advertisers. And I think for Forbes to like do that is an example of just like it's just bad. It's just bad, you know.
Yeah, but it's heating up. I mean, the whole space is heating up where they're looking at that, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays itself out. Because it used to be if you wanted one of these things, you paid for a subscription to it, and they went, oh, you know what? We'll give it away for free, which means now you are the product.
Yep.
And then they figured out how to monetize and streamline that, right? As Jack pointed out, they're solving a different problem. And then that created an unintended consequence. And so we've created it's not asymptotic. This isn't an arms race. This is just we're going to sort it out.
Yep.
Changing gears, I want to talk about freaking out over the DBIR. I think Robert Graham, who's a personal friend, throw a caveat out there, but the Eretisec blog, Rob has done.
Absolutely. I've been on a number of panels at DEF CON.
I've been a subscriber for a long time. He makes an outstanding. Yes, exactly, Michael.
First time, long time reader.
He made an awesome,
many times fanboy.
An awesome point, and I read. There's probably 1,000 different blogs, right? That every week we try and sort through it. He just made an outstanding point, and for him to make what we believe is an outstanding point is saying something, right? He said first, when they investigate a system that found indicators of compromise,
IOCs,
then they secondly correlate that to a vulnerability or intrusion detection system. They don't do that the other way around. Because such a system produces too many false positives in the data.
Yep.
So what he's saying is that when they produce these findings in a incident report, DBIR, whatever it is, right? They find a system that's compromised, and then they backtrace, and they say, oh, look, there was a vulnerability that was found by a vulnerability management system or some kind of intrusion detection system. They're not going the other way around and saying, oh, there's an intrusion or there's a vulnerability, and by the way, it's exploited. And that's not a knock on anyone's technology, but...
Yeah, it is.
It's a knock on everybody's technology.
It's a knock on everyone's technology, but if you have the right technologies, you should be going either way, right, Jack? I want to hear your comments on this.
You should have a lot more context than what they're doing here. And in my stories, I actually have 6 links about the whole DBIR thing. So the DBIR is out.
Jack just schooled me, by the way.
DBIR is a great report with a ton of great data. I found it distressingly disappointing this year, not because it wasn't a good report, with the exception of the vulnerability section, but because it's like this dashboard of fail. It's a report card of failure. Because once again, for the 9th year in a row, they're saying, you know what you ought to do? You ought to try some 2-factor auth. Maybe you should patch your shit. It's like, oh God, how about some network segmentation? Maybe your point of sale systems shouldn't be connected. It's like, oh, come on. You know, so if we take their advice from the first year, we can overlay it, and they have, you know, the data to back it up. And yes, it's there are a bunch of biases that they disclaim, but it was that part of it is they keep trying to figure new ways to tell the stories that the data shows, and the story doesn't change that much, except for the evolution of who contributes, until you get to the vulnerability section. And Jericho blogged on the OSVDV site and took them to task for how they did their vulnerability assessment and for their vuln data. And then he got some blowback, and so he did a follow-up piece on that. And then Kenna Security, formerly Risk.io, responded. And then Dan Guido jumped in with a pretty solid rebuttal over on the Trail of Bits blog. And then Rob Graham jumped in. And so basically we have, the folks that kind of know what they're doing, but they made some fundamental flaws in assumptions. I don't think Freak was the number one thing exploited. I don't think a man in the middle got popped more often on corporate networks.
I agree. That was a flaw, I think, in the DBIR. I agree.
And it wasn't the DBI, because this was written by Kenna Security. That wasn't actually written by the Verizon team. But if you have Rob Graham telling you don't understand how IDS works, and Jericho telling you your vulnerability data is not great, and then Dan Guido piles on, maybe you should step back and think about what you've done.
Those are 3 people with some serious reputations in the industry, and if they're questioning your data, you should be scared.
And specifically,
you go 2 blocks and feel shame 2 minutes.
Right. If Jericho tells you you've got a problem with the way you analyze vulnerability data, with his history, having been
you've got issues. You need to reevaluate yourself.
And if Rob Graham, who the inventor of intrusion prevention, if Rob says you got IDS concepts wrong, you've been schooled by some folks. The DBIR, I think, is still really valuable. It's just, to me, it was depressing this year. Outside of the vuln stuff, it's like, oh man, really? Do we really need to be told this?
I think that the DBIR, Jack, and you've analyzed this, I think, maybe more so than I have. In fact, more so than I have, right? Certain aspects, I think you can pull some really good correlations and data. Other aspects, you just need to just ignore.
Right.
Is that pretty accurate in your opinion, Jack?
So I want to comment before Jack does. I will say yes, because I don't think I've ever read more than one Verizon DBIR, because I get my analysis from both Jack and Paul on this podcast.
That's a good point, Larry.
The DBIR, there are a couple of things. So the Verus framework that underlies the data is really cool. And if you do incident response, if you can map your data to Verus, which is pretty simple, at least at the lower levels, then you can compare your environment or your clients, if you're a contractor or outside service, with what the DBIR data is. And then if you look at the corporate slicing and dicing for different verticals that they do throughout the year, you can get some great context. But context is key. And that's enough of that, except I just will say my second story is if the DBIR, if you don't care, or if you're just sick of it this year, ThreatBut did release their DZIR, which is absolutely worth a read. If whether you like the DBIR or not, I would check out ThreatBut's DZIR because it's
it's ThreatBut is one of those things that's really interesting to me in that I don't see how they're monetizing this, because if they're not, they really need to in some way, shape, or form, even if it's a freaking joke, because it's awesome.
Here's the thing. It's cybersecurity, and it's a joke. And the difference is, I mean, that's not unusual, right? There's a lot of cybersecurity that's a joke, but they mean it to be a joke.
Oh my God! Favorite color of your threat actor? It looks like a kindergarten chart.
Dude, this is beautiful. They need to find a way to monetize this, because shut up and take my money.
I would totally sponsor the ThreatBut report.
From anybody from ThreatBut, please let us know how we can sponsor and send you money.
Please.
Because it's worth it, if nothing for the entertainment value alone, and I spent enough on cable TV.
Phishing is super effective. Here's another chart to prove it. And it's just like a chart.
Yeah.
It's like random.
The donut chart is a bunch of colors with no key.
It's corporate America.
Here we go. The wrap up. Revving up your engine. Listen to her howler roar. Metal under tension. Begging you to touch and go. I just think that's awesome. It makes absolutely no sense, but I think it's awesome.
That's what makes it perfect.
Yes.
Yep. Shut up and take my money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Special note from a CEO, please buy more licenses so we can buy more Lambo, or you get the drift. It's your loss if you don't have the best protection.
Namaste.
Yeah.
What is the CEO's name, Paul?
Richard Derriere.
Derriere.
Sorry, Derriere.
Dick Derriere. It's the logo, ThreatBut. It's a butt attached to a dick.
Butt.
That's awesome.
Break the internet.
Alrighty. That's our TBIR coverage for this episode.
And there you have it.
And there you have the Security Weekly Take. Anyone got any more stories they want to talk about this week?
The only one that I thought that was really interesting came up at work the other day, and I saw this again today, is that Walmart is suing one of the credit card issuers, I think it's MasterCard, over a chip and pin implementation. In that they did chip and pin and not, they claim to be doing chip and pin, yet they're in fact doing chip and signature, as opposed to chip and pin. And this whole thing about you just
turned the Jack Daniel crank, dude.
I did, Jack.
I've got nothing to say. I'm gonna sip.
You know what, Jack?
I'm gonna sip my Amontillado.
I got nothing either, bro.
I got out. I was in Canada a couple of weeks ago. I have all sorts to say about it, but I'm not going to.
Oh, Jack, you disappoint me.
I can comment on Walmart.
Yes, please do.
I used to work for Walmart. Oh, not really, but I sort of did. But
hi, welcome to Walmart. Have a nice day.
Yeah, I'm probably in trouble.
Were you a greeter? Is that what you're saying?
No, I worked for them as a consultant, but they have so many attorneys. This was cool, actually. I was doing a consulting job, and I was reviewing all this stuff, and we found all these problems, and I was working for a family member of Walmart, and I was able to go out, and I got like a whole pile of attorneys to go and harass this company. It was really better. Nice. They have so many lawyers, it's beyond comprehension.
Because they can afford them.
You could just like go and it's like picking lawyers out of a bullpen of lawyers.
Well, it's kind of like and I just started researching this story. Oracle and Google are fighting over open source software. I didn't put that in the stories here, but I started reading about this week. It's like really epic
I
battles.
I used to work for a company that did these lawsuits where I call them corporate slap fights.
Yes.
And I mean, they literally
Yes.
have these things. And I was involved in this. I was involved in stuff
It's
where
exactly like that, Larry.
no,
it's
it's exactly like that. And it's like you're going. There's $1,000 an hour being spent on this. And
That seems conservative.
and it's just they're like, can you draw a fort around this city on this map? And I'm like, I'm not really an artist. And they're like, we'll just do it anyway. It charges $250 an hour. And it's like, yeah, okay, I'll do it for $250 an hour.
I'll do anything for money.
There's hardly anything I would not do for $250 an hour. I mean,
I
there's
would agree
stuff
with you
in
there.
like freeway
I can think of things
exit
that I wouldn't
ramps
do for
that I would
$250 an hour.
It goes back to that discussion we had about monitoring people's porn.
Yeah,
There are things that I would not do.
there are things I would not do for
Yes.
$250 an hour.
I would monitor people's porn for $250 an hour.
I would
Yeah.
monitor. I would monitor. I would not
Monitor.
partake in.
So you're going to be like a porn curator. Is what
There's a line, Michael, is
For
what we're
$250
saying.
an
There's a
hour, yeah.
line.
I would curate legal porn for $250 an hour.
Is that a thing?
Curating porn.
Hey,
legal-
speaking
no,
of
legal
curating
porn-
It's
porn,
it's
like,
Legal-
I was gonna
legal
say it's
porn.
not Rule 43, but it's like Rule 27. Yeah,
There's legal porn, yeah.
If there's a job out there, someone does it. I mean,
I've been in these like corporate HR meetings where they're like sitting there saying, let's discuss the legal porn versus the illegal porn, and we have to define that clearly. So, which porn is in which category?
and we have subsidiaries in these countries, and this means different things in different.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like in Malaysia, this is defined as pornographic. So,
When you can use bestiality and S&M in the same
That's
sentence,
right.
and no one like bats an eye, that's
Yeah.
saying something, Doug.
that's really cool about the modern society that we can say bestiality and S&M and all this kind of stuff. That like when I was like in high school, if you even said bestiality in a public place, you could probably get arrested.
Wow.
But now here we are on like a public forum.
On
And
Security
see,
Weekly.
when my mom was in high school, if you said bestiality, you knew the two kids that lived on the farm that were into that type of thing. But
We've come full circle here
Yay.
on Security Weekly. Thanks,
It's
everyone,
evolution.
for watching. Thanks to our special guest, Doug White, who is welcome back anytime in the
I
local
love it.
area. Larry Pesce, Michael Santarcangelo, Jack Daniel, thank you all very much
Jack.
for participating in this episode of Security Weekly.
and I got to say, Jack, I miss you.
I want to see you here in the studio. I want to fondle your beard in person.
2 weeks.
We all do.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Next week I'm in LA at the LAISSA Summit, but the week after I should. No.
You'll be up for
Yeah,
beard
I should be in
fondling.
studio in 2 weeks.
Oh,
Excellent.
Shit. I think I'm at Sandsfire that week.
Jack, you may be running the show. My wife may be giving birth in 2 weeks. So
So, Jack, it might be you and I on a show.
Okay.
I won't leave you guys hanging.
You'll have to have me back. So,
Doug, you're
Yes.
welcome back anytime. Thank you very
He's
much.
doing labor. Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Hell yes.
And Larry, take us out.
Over. And out.